Hundreds of the survivors of Hurricane Katrina from New Orleans arrived at the Washington, D.C. Armory on December 6, 2005.
So Metro went down and get them, or they throw them out?
Most were poor. Most were African American. Many felt that they had been deserted by the government and left to die. 66% of African Americans think that the government's response would have been faster if most of the victims had been white. It reminded some of the benign neglect of black people during slavery. All of this at a time when America is the economic power of the world with the most advanced technologies, the mightiest military the world has ever seen, and who is in Iraq to spread democracy, while the black poor are left to fend for themselves. African Americans are the mirrors and paradox of American democracy. This is Annapolis, Maryland. Founded in 1649, it is the state capital and home to the United States Naval Academy. With a population of 35,000, its small town charm makes it one of America's favorite tourist attractions. From 1783 to 1784, it was also the temporary capital of the United States of America. Today, it is America's sailing capital. It is also the home of the Kinte Alex Haley Memorial. It commemorates the place of arrival of Alex Haley's African ancestor, Kunta Kinte, here at the harbor of Annapolis. The memorial includes a sculptor group of a seated Alex Haley reading from a book on his lap to 3 children of different ethnic backgrounds. It portrays in word and symbol Alex Haley's vision for national, racial reconciliation and healing. It is a reminder of what happens when we allow the dark side of greed and racism to guide our national policies. The same waters that now serve as recreation are also the place where one of history's great holocausts took place. Is it possible for us to completely move forward as a nation without looking back at our roots? There are many moral contradictions in our roots that have been submerged into the abyss of a national amnesia. The paradox of America is represented in the life of Thomas Jefferson. He was the author of the Declaration of Independence, the 3rd President of the United States, and a slave owner who never freed his slaves, except for the children of Sally Hemings, because he was their father. Ironically, Jefferson and many of the founding fathers deeply respected the black Egyptian mysteries and incorporated Egyptian symbols into the building blocks of America. Here we see the reverse side of the Great Seal. It contains a pyramid of 13 courses of stone which represent the Union. Above the pyramid we see the Egyptian eye of Horus, or Heru, the son of God, enclosed in a pyramid. You can find these African symbols on the reverse side of any dollar bill. The Washington Monument, one of the most easily recognizable symbols of the United States, is actually a copy of a 6,000-year-old symbol that represents the resurrection of the first ruler of ancient Egypt, who was a black man. Thousands of tourists travel to the nation's capital every year to view this magnificent tribute to America's founding father, without realizing its African roots. Yet, while they loved African sciences, they enslaved the African people. Of course, these contradictions are not mentioned in most of our 4th of July celebrations of freedom. Also rarely mentioned is the fact that the first person to actually die for America's freedom from Britain was a fugitive slave named Crispus Attucks. He was killed in 1770 during the Boston Massacre. And while it's important to remember Washington's crossing of the Delaware, it's also important to know that the crossing of the Atlantic by enslaved Africans added to Washington's wealth. As the Continental Army fought the British for emancipation, African Americans were being terrorized and tortured. And yet, in the midst of these horrors, there were black people who refused to be defeated by racism. During these hard times, Phyllis Wheatley became the first African American poet to have a book published. She gained international fame for her work. She also published an anti-slavery letter and was praised by Voltaire. On the battlefield, however, Washington wouldn't allow African Americans to join the army. But when the Earl of Dunmore promised freedom for all blacks if they fought for England, Washington changed his mind. And eventually over 5,000 African Americans fought for the Continental Army and helped to win the war. None of these black soldiers were invited to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787. And when the framers wrote the words, "We the people," they didn't mean to include those soldiers either. In fact, according to the Constitution, African Americans were to be considered only 3/5 of a person. According to these founding fathers, the ancestors of Jackie Robinson weren't considered to be full human beings. The ancestors of Rosa Parks weren't considered to be full human beings. The ancestors of Oprah Winfrey weren't considered to be full human beings. The ancestors of Martin Luther King weren't considered to be full human beings. Of course, the irony is that these full human beings and others like them are the ones who actually helped to make the Constitution and its promise a reality.